Good evening and welcome to Norfolk Town Hall for tonight's debate in the race for state representative. I am Adam Gentili and I will be the moderator for tonight. And with me are the two candidates for office. On my left is the incumbent Republican, Mr. Shawn Dooley of Norfolk. And on my right is the challenger, the Democrat from Plainville, Mr. Brian Hamlin. Both gentlemen have agreed to the format for the debate prior to tonight, which will consist mainly of questions that have been submitted by the voters. Before we begin, we will have an opening statement from each gentleman, and we begin with Mr. Hamlin.
Thank you, Adam. My name is Brian Hamlin. I want to be your candidate for state representative in the 9th Norfolk District. I'm a lifelong resident of our district. I'm a local businessman and a proud product of our public schools. I went through Norfolk and King Philip. We are facing challenges here that we need some real leadership to confront. Our schools should be prioritizing growth, not proficiency. When we teach the potential of every student, we can inspire the community leaders of tomorrow. We need to pass legislation to fully fund our public schools. We have a serious public health crisis on our hands with COVID-19 and also the opiate epidemic. We need more innovation addressing these issues. Instead of suing our governor, we need a representative who will take action on both of these issues. We need to increase our assistance to our working families who need to put food on their table. We need to lower our cost of prescription drugs. We need to fully fund our mental health care system, and I will work with our legislators and our governor on these public safety issues. When I am your state representative, I will guarantee my door will always be open. You have a seat at my table. If you call me, contact me in some way of messaging, texting, I want you to be assured that I will get back to you in a timely fashion. We may not always agree on everything. Best part of this job is being the representative is to hear what you have to say about it. I want to hear you change my voice to a point where I will be now voicing for my constituents and my public. I want to thank everybody tonight, Norfolk Community League, Norfolk Cable, for being here with us tonight and having all this happen for us. I want to earn your vote between now and November 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. Hamlin. Mr. Dooley.
Thank you, sir. And I would like to thank NCTV and the Norfolk Community League for putting this on. Also thank Brian for being here as well. My name's Shawn Dooley, and I'm currently your state representative. I've been the state representative for the past 6 years, and I am asking for your vote. I've worked hard. I've tried hard. We've had our successes. We've had our failures. But the best aspect of this job isn't so much the things that happen on Beacon Hill. It's the ability to connect and be a part of the community and meet with people and help them in their times of need. You know, we've had a lot of issues, obviously, with this year with COVID, but throughout my tenure, whether it's helping someone get their unemployment insurance check or help them with their new business and getting some of the processes in place and make sure we get through some of the red tape is really a big aspect of my job. And I love doing that. I love being able to be a servant to the community, to be able to help people, to be your friend, to be a neighbor. And I think that's the most important thing. I'm very, very fortunate that I've been, I was in finance for 17 years, and then I owned my own small business. And so I've seen that aspect and seen both sides of, public sector and private sector. But throughout it all, I've been able to build contacts throughout the state and also nationally. And so we were able to work in partnership, and whether it's with my, the COO of Eversource, who I know, or with the governor, who I'm good friends with, or whoever it is, the ability to have that connection and be able to bring that connection back home is paramount to being successful as a representative. So I sincerely hope that you appreciate what I've done. I try my best every day, and I hope I earned your vote, and I hope you'll vote for me either for the rest of this week in early voting or in person on Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dooley. All right, first question will be for Mr. Dooley, and Mr. Hamlin, you have a chance to respond as well. And it has to do with COVID-19. Are there shortfalls to the state's public health response to COVID-19? And if so, what specifically needs to change with our current public health approach?
The current public health approach, well, one of the things that changed, we actually were able to have it changed yesterday, and this is something I've been hammering on for the past month, is we've changed how the metric is determined whether a community goes red, because there's a lot of other things that happen once a community goes red, whether it's for schools or different businesses have different regulations in place. So what we've done now, and so this is hot off the presses, is if it is an isolated incident where they're like in Rentham, we had the 15 cases in a nursing home, that doesn't wipe out the entire town. Now it becomes a little yellow with an asterisk as opposed to an automatic red, and it gives the town a black mark, and all of a sudden schools automatically have to shut down. So that was one of the things that we were able to quickly change. Some of the other things, the number one issue that we need to deal with right now is increasing the availability for testing. The federal government, the children in Washington have done a horrendous job of releasing the money and helping us get that out there. We need to be really focusing on having the availability for everyone to get tested frequently. That's the only way we're going to really get on top of this. We need to be able to have schools have the children be tested, have adults, and turn around the test in a quick and timely fashion, as opposed to 4, 5, 6 days, and you can only get tested if you have this certain amount of symptoms or you've been exposed to someone for over 15 minutes. That isn't going to help us, because we're going to end up having a ton of people who have no idea. They're asymptomatic and they do not have any of the symptoms. As far as they know, they haven't been exposed, and they're going to continue to go into work and be servers in our restaurants, or teachers in our schools, or students in our schools, and that's going to continue the cycle. Only way to really do it is to increase testing and have a really, really sound tracing aspect after that's done, so we're able to really isolate those people and kill out the disease that way. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Hamlin?
One of the bigger focuses, as Representative Dooley was saying, is they need to get more testing going in the timely fashion. My wife had been tested a couple times. We've had a couple of scares going through there. And what we came down to, the fact was, we actually waited 8 days. So a timely fashion is going to be the biggest thing that's going to be happening there. You have different people that is being allowed in from other states for work, different things like that. If they need to be tested, they need to be tested back home. There's nothing in Massachusetts that will give them any sort of a rapid test. So it's something, in order to protect our public, if people are coming into our state, people from out of state should be allowed to get rapid testing also, not just state of Massachusetts residents. So in order to help things work all towards this is something that they really start focus on, is the rapid testing. If they can get more of those out there for us. I know they're trying to keep it limited to the Massachusetts residents at this point. It's something that needs to be addressed. I know they're working on their, and sounds good for the vaccines and everything else, but their testing that they need to do has to be done in the timely fashion. Is going to be the biggest thing that's going to do it, and then people to be wearing the mask and social distancing is going to be the key things.
Speaking of a vaccine, this question for you to start off, Mr. Hamlin. If a COVID-19 vaccine is proven to be both safe and effective, should the state mandate the vaccine?
The tough part with that is, as they're doing something like that, we're dealing with the human body. So you don't fully know how it's going to be working for people. Can I honestly say no, I would not say it has to be state mandated for that policy. I wouldn't be an enforcer behind that. There's a lot of people that are already fighting different things. You have kids that are in there. You would need to follow up in regards for it and see how things go. Still create more testing in that. At what point do you say the testing is going to work well? And when you see the different tests, how long they've been out there, there are different results in that, then I can make a better determination in regards for that. At this point, I can't say offhand I would force that situation, no.
No, I would agree from the standpoint. I would not be in favor of mandatory testing. It's any vaccine, I don't care who it is, what it's being done for, in its first round has a lot of unknowns. I don't care how well they've done the clinical trials. In this particular case, they're ramping up the clinical trials to a level that they've never done before. They're turning things around, whereas a typical vaccine is taking 3 to 4 years. They're trying to do it in under 12 months. That's crazy to then say that everybody has to do it. There's too many risks. There's too much uncertainty, and the reality is, these drug companies aren't purely trying to rush to be first to the market for some altruistic reason. Big Pharma is about profit. They're trying to get out there and they're pushing these things out and they're doing all these trials and they're doing, I think they're doing it for the right reason, but they're also doing it for a profitable reason. And I think when you take that into account, it would be very, very dangerous for the government to say that everyone has to have this, all children have to have it in order to go to school, everyone has to do it to be able to go to work. I think that's just, I think that's foolhardy. If it 5 years, 6 years down the line, and it's proven effective and has the efficacy rate like measles, mumps, and rubella, different story. Then we can put it into the protocols and start immunizing the population like we did with polio back in the 50s. But to just do this rapidly, I would be against that.
Governor Baker plans to utilize $51 million of federal aid for assistance to small businesses. Are there, and this question is for you, Mr. Dooley, are there additional measures the state can take to support small businesses who have suffered because of the pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. Numerous cases. We have whether it's workers' comp or the unemployment insurance rates that are going to be skyrocketing based on these new things, for loan forgivenesses, for being able to have a payroll tax holiday for a certain period of time, or a certain period of forgiveness, or a long-term zero interest loans. All of those things are able to help small businesses stay afloat. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy. We need them in our towns. We have to make sure that these businesses are able to stay afloat. And the PPP money was great from the federal government, but it was a stopgap. And this is not going to be over in 3 months, 6 months. This is going to have long-term effects, and we need to make sure that these businesses have the bandwidth and the runway to rebuild from what they lost and start building up, their, paying back their back rent, paying back their back taxes, things along those lines. And if we make it so hard on them that we say, all right, you owe X on PPP and you owe, $1 million on different sales tax, and you have employees tax, and we're going to increase your insurance and everything like that, business owners are going to look at it and say, I'm sorry, I would love to stay in business, but I can't. I'm going to declare bankruptcy. And that's going to have a huge ripple effect, because once one happens, then the next happens, and then so on and so on and so on. And if you think the COVID crisis has been bad, we move into a major, major depression, it's going to have a generational impact.
Yeah, I mean, the worst, as we're looking at here now, the worst, I think, is still lingering over there with what's going on with the economy, what's going to be happening for our rejuvenation behind things. The state has the money to put forward to help things out. The focus is going to have to be on getting the money to where it needs to be properly. They've had some issues in regards for people filing the PPP improperly. They've got people stealing from different things. So when they have to focus on getting things done in a proper fashion in order to help the businesses out, assistance to it, guidance to it is always going to be something that's going to be huge for it. As a businessman looking at the different things, trying to get the guidance behind how to fill out the paperwork, get the paperwork in there in the mails, it was extremely difficult without the assistance behind the banks helping us out, without groups like as their state and federal aid is SCORE. They set up different things for you so you can see those things that are happening for it. So as you're trying to still run your business and then keep it alive during all this, the funding needs to be there from the state. What you get from the government is going to be something completely different, but I mean, we need to focus on getting it done in a proper fashion to the people that it really need to be going to.
Has the
Can I just rebut on
Please.
one aspect of, I know a lot of people talk about, oh, well, the state has plenty of money and the state needs to do this. The reality is the state doesn't have plenty of money. Right now we are, depending on who you look at and which analysis, we're $8 billion down from what we originally projected, which was $43 billion. So it's a significant amount down. And that's going to carry forward for not just this year, but it's going to carry forward for years to come. So we, as the state of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we can't spend like the federal government. We can't just decide we're going to print money and things along those lines. By law, by our Constitution, we have to have a balanced budget every single time. So we have to determine is, all right, here's where the shortfall is. What are we going to take away from? And if we take this money that we now have 35 billion instead of 43 billion, and we're saying, all right, we've got to divide it up. We still have to pay for roads. We still have to pay for bridges. We still have to pay for our schools. We have to still pay for, the largest chunk, which is mass health. And mass health, unfortunately, is growing exponentially because of this crisis, because more people are unemployed and more people aren't able to get things. So, our situation is it would be great to say, oh, well, we just need to write more checks. I mean, what we really need to do is the federal government to step up and do what they're supposed to be doing. But, unfortunately, that's a different conversation. I think Brian and I would both be in agreement that, all of the people down in Washington need to get their head out of their whats and do what's best and do their job and do what's best for the American people and come up with a real plan. But from a state standpoint, from a legislative standpoint, our hands are somewhat tied on that while we're waiting for Washington.
There's a balance that every state has tried to strike between protecting the public health while also ensuring that the businesses aren't closed at the rate that we've seen them close. Has Massachusetts struck the right balance, or are they putting public health or businesses ahead of one another? Brian, you can start.
Okay. I would definitely say state of Massachusetts is going more towards public health. There isn't a doubt in my mind whatsoever. And that's fine by me. I mean, even as a businessman, I'm looking at it. It doesn't sound right to be saying that, but if you don't have health in your residents and taking care of them that way, the businesses will come and go. There's nothing easy about it. There's nothing easy to say, this isn't going to work well. Going through this as a businessman, we had times where I had an extremely clean cabinet shop because customers didn't want us in the house. Customers didn't want to go out and choose their appliances to do different things. So you're looking at these issues all the time, and the governor has done a great job at controlling the health of the public, and I commend him for that. As far as the businesses, that's something completely different, because you can't have both of them working together unless it's really set in that fashion. He's looking at something, and anybody in legislation at that point is looking at something that has been set up that we've never seen before. So now you're looking at something that you're trying to pull something together, make something happen. First thing you start with health. After that, if you have your health, you can work a business tougher, you can keep pushing on it, and if it's not going to make those ends meet, then obviously you'll have to close down, but at least if you have good health, you're going to be able to work at it. It's something I've always lived by.
Thank you, Brian.
I guess I'd take a little different approach from the standpoint of, especially at the beginning, the government was really picking winners and losers. We were not letting our small business owners open up, the mom and pop stores on Main Street, but Target and Walmart and Lowe's and Home Depot were able to open up and have hundreds of people. So and they were competing against our small local businesses. The thought process was, well, they have better controls, and I did an interview on Bloomberg, and they're like, oh, but those schools have stores have better controls, and I'm like, are you telling me that Target, who's training a bunch of 18-year-olds to take care of it, have better controls and are better concerned than Joe and Wendy Smith, who own the jewelry store on the corner, who know all their clients and have a couple people in at a time, and they're actually friends with them because they're our friends and their neighbors? Those people are going to take way better care to make sure that everything's clean and everyone's following the process, as opposed to the person that's just there for the paycheck. And what I would have loved to have seen, and the state has gotten better. It's progressed to a point now where there's still some things that slot machines were allowed to be open, but arcades weren't. I mean, it just some of the things just didn't really make sense. There was no rhyme or reason in it. But what I wish they would have done, and what I still am continuing to push for, is more local control, because the Norfolk Board of Health and the Rentham Board of Health, and the town manager and the building inspector and the people that are in charge of these communities know the case-by-case scenario a lot better, as opposed to this one-size-fits-all, decreed down by Beacon Hill that all of this entire blanket type XYZ business can't open, as opposed to saying, all right, here's what can open, here are the guidelines. If you can meet these guidelines, let's move forward, because we have to still keep these businesses going, because if these family businesses go out of business, that's going to create a greater impact on our society, and it's going to go layer upon layer upon layer. And if we're able to let the Board of Health say, all right, use Brian's cabinet shop as an example, they're doing everything right. They've got things in place. They're having these different safeguards. Everyone's wearing masks. They're doing all of the right things. They should be allowed to stay open, and because they're able to control the environment, they're able to look at it. And you have XYZ company down the street that's not doing any of them. All right, fine. They don't get to open. And that's how I think it's a much better and much more rational approach, as opposed to the one-size-fits-all, anyone that falls into this category X can't open.
Final COVID question. Then we can.
A lot of COVID questions.
Then we can move on. I told
It's
you they were going to
2020.
be
It's 2020.
topic du jour. And this one, I'll go to you first, Mr. Dooley. The impact of COVID on the economy has snowballed into a housing crisis. Do you support an extension to the eviction moratorium?
What I support on the eviction moratorium is what I originally had tried to get done in the beginning. The reality is the eviction moratorium that was done by the Commonwealth at the beginning was a blanket, again, one size fits all. And instead, what they should have done, which would have been better, is to allow the housing court to do case-by-case scenarios and let the tenant and the landlord go and do a teleconference. And if the tenant is actually out of a job and is not able to pay their rent, then they get an extension. If the landlord is able to say that this person actually works for the government and they haven't even taken a pay cut whatsoever, they're just using this crisis as a means to get out of paying their rent, which is happening, then the government should, the judge should say, all right, knock it off, pay your rent. We're not going to allow you, if you're going to do this, then you're going to be able to get evicted. And I think there's in the judges that I've spoken to on this particular issue, between them and the clerk magistrates, there's plenty of bandwidth to do this. 95% of the time, it's fine. It's cut and dry. If the person's working and they're still earning their income, then they shouldn't be getting a COVID break from paying their rent and not being able to be evicted. If they actually have a problem, 100%. Those are the people we should take care of. That's what the government's for. That's what the safety net is for. That's what we should be doing. But we shouldn't allow people who want to abuse the system to get that benefit. And I think what the CDC did with their eviction moratorium, which goes through the end of the year, actually covers that. It does a very, very good job. If you're making under $90,000, then you're covered. If you're able to show that if you sign an affidavit that you have lost your job, you're covered. So we've already created that at the federal level. So we have that protection in place. To have an additional protection in place from the state level that says blanket, no matter what the case, no matter what your circumstances, no matter how much money you could be worth $10 million and you're renting the top floor of the Ritz-Carlton, you can right now not pay your rent, and there's not a damn thing they could do about it. And that's just not fair. That's not fair to the It's not the big companies. It's the little landlords. It's the guy that has the 3 family that has to still pay his mortgage and still pay his rent and still pay his taxes and still pay his utility bills. And the reason he's renting out the other 2 floors is because that's the only way he can afford it. That's the person that's getting screwed. That's the person that's getting hurt.
Mr. Hamlin?
When all this had started, I had a conversation with my bank, and I said, this is going to be an all hands on, everybody's in on this one, I said. And he said, oh, yes, absolutely. I said, no, I don't think you understand what I'm saying. I said, the banks will be taking hits on this also. I said, that's the only way we can make this happen. I said, if you get people on board with this, that sign the contracts, we're extending things out, we understand this is going on. I said, you can look at reducing things, you can look at changing things, I said, but it has to be something understood. You do the blanket, like Shawn was saying, that covers people and not forceful in the aspect that you need a breakdown of it. You need the paperwork proving your job is gone, everything's happening to it. Okay, now you have that ability to collect on that forgiveness. If you're still working, everything's still happening, you've got your money through PPP, whatever it's going to be, you need to prove documentation that you're not able to afford it. So they need to do something on, it's going to be a case-by-case type of thing. It's going to be, there are towns out there that haven't been devastated like we have in different areas. There are towns out here that have not seen the issues that we're looking at through the infection rates, through anything like that. You just don't have those things happening everywhere. So the blanket thing does need to go. It does need to be set up on a case-by-case type of thing. And this really should have been started after, well, once they set the date, they should have been starting on working the next phase in already. And that just didn't happen that way. So they really need to step it up and get something working, so it's going to be a case-by-case type of thing. Because now they're at the panic situation. It's like, this is running out. What do we do now?
Yeah.
It's too late for it.
Thank you.
They needed to step on that.
Next question, go to you first, Mr. Hamlin.
Yep.
Do you believe that supporting the local police and the movement for racial justice are mutually exclusive, or is there a way to effectively achieve both goals?
I believe there's a way to effectively achieve both goals. I don't believe in defunding the police department. What I want to look more towards is reallocating the money that they have there for training. So we can do training for de-escalation tactics, we can do training for implicit bias training, so we can work on that and make the ability for the officers that are out there to have that better judgment, to make those decisions when they need to in that panic situation. Their lives are on the line. Anytime they walk up to a vehicle, anytime they walk up to a house, if they're doing something sort of domestic or anything like that, their lives are on the line right off the bat. So they're unnerved walking up to that. And I can't blame them for that. But they need more training on how the ability is to handle the situations that they're walking into. We need to focus on that training for it. And if we can get, I mean, we're looking at the fact where the state doesn't have a lot of money because of all the cutbacks and everything to it, but we want to see if we can get them to reallocate their monies for the different funds and that are out there to appropriate it for something like this. It's going to help all aspects.
No, I'll agree with Ryan from the standpoint of, I don't believe in defunding the police. I do not believe they're mutually exclusive. I was on record of supporting the original bill that Governor Baker put out, which we did, he did with the Black and Latino Caucus, and he did with the Massachusetts Coalition of Police, and he did with the Chief of Police, and it was a wonderful, well thought out thing. It created more training, it created more programs, it created more more of a streamlined process if there was a problem on how to deal with it. And unfortunately, as politicians are wont to do, they decided, once that got out there, they decided, well, that's not good enough. I'm going to dump on all these other things, and I've all these other wants, and let's defund the police. Let's get rid of the police. The police are the bad guys, and or we're going to take away all their their guns or whatever these crazy ideas, and more importantly, they wanted to take away their liability protection. So if they were out on a job and they did something wrong in the heat of a moment, they could be sued personally and civilly and lose their family. And what are you going to get with, what kind of police officer are you going to get if that's the risk? Not only they're risking their lives, but they're risking their families' lives and their entire livelihood if they, in the light of day, with everyone sitting back and looking at a particular situation, said, oh, well, if you would have come in through this door instead of that door, you wouldn't have had this problem. Those are the sort of things that it's great to second guess, but I think our police officers, for the most part, 99% of them do a phenomenal job. We need to get rid of the 1%, that don't. But that can be said probably about every profession. Not teachers, of course, but
Of course. Is there, and a follow-up for both of you, do you believe there's systemic racism in the criminal justice system in Massachusetts?
Do I believe it? I don't know it, but I believe that there is. I think human nature, there's some racism. I think there's. I don't know if it's overtly racist. I think there is preconceived notions. I think there's personal biases. I think there's life experiences, especially if someone's been in a gang unit in the really bad section of a Mattapan and things like that. I think they are, they're instinctively going to think a particular way. And so do I think there's that? Yes. But do I think there's systemic racism where there's overt racism that, this is a culture and it's celebrated and it's encouraged within our police force? As a firefighter, I've dealt with a lot of police officers throughout my life. And, and as a legislator, I've met with, hundreds of them. I've never seen that. And same with the judges, especially the judges in Massachusetts that are pretty liberal, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen it with the district attorneys. So I have not ever personally experienced that. I think there's probably a personal bias, and I think we need to work on making that more aware in someone's conscious, and address that and make sure we discuss that. But I don't think we're like, we'll pick on Mississippi. I think we're very, very different as a culture and as a people than other places in this country and in the world.
I feel a lot in the same way. There are a lot of things in Massachusetts that are looking in that direction for the systemic racism. There are a lot of things that have happened in different areas, but I don't see a lot of it in our area here. I'm not seeing a lot of it through the court systems, in particular of finger pointing, different things like that. There are addresses that we need to happen here, and our biggest thing is going to be dealing with people in inequality. It doesn't, whether it's racism, whether it's sexual, anything like that. I mean, if you look somebody in the eye and talk to them point blank, that's what you're going to be doing. Doesn't make a difference the color of skin or anything like that. So, I mean, we need to start working in regards for that to keep things simple. The animosity that's out there now in two different directions can be instigated, can be redevised through conversations, and it's nothing that really should be happening, so it can be altered. It can definitely be altered in the fashion that when we pick ourselves up to be the people that our parents have taught us to be, we can overcome any of this.
Thank you. Moving on to a topic that is one you typically stay away from at the dinner table, abortion. With the pending confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett, the chances of Roe v. Wade being overturned will increase, although certainly not a certainty. If the decision is overturned, the decision over abortion access could be tossed back to the state level. Currently before the legislature is the Roe Act, which could lay the groundwork for a post-Roe v. Wade world in Massachusetts. Starting with you, Representative Dooley, do you support or oppose the Roe Act as is currently constituted?
The current version of the Roe Act I do not support. It is not done to protect abortion rights. It's an expansion bill. It sets forth, there's actually one aspect of it that I do like that changes the medical need if a woman needs an abortion for a medical reason, life-threatening. you no longer have to go through the courts and things like that, and I think that's right. But for the other two aspects, major aspects of it, of not requiring parental consent or parental notification for a child, I have a real problem with that. I don't care what the situation, whatever the surgery is, whether it's fixing a broken leg or an appendix or an abortion. I don't want my 14-year-old daughter being able to make that decision on their own without my decision, and being consulted and being there for her, holding her hand, making sure she was all right, and making sure she gets a second opinion and she's not being taken advantage of. That's one. Second one is full-term abortion. This opens up the ability to do full-term, not a medical necessity, not a child in trouble, but a full-term baby to be able to be aborted up until the moment of birth. That's an expansion that's just, whether it's me as a father or as a Christian or just as a human, I'm morally opposed to. I think that's wrong. I think the current Roe statute of viability, I think is a good one. I think that's a common sense approach. I think there's so many people that would love to adopt a child. There's so many people there that would love that child, and at this point it's a child. It can feel, it can breathe. It's literally moments from being 10 minutes before to 10 minutes after one's murder, one's okay under this. And I just cannot fathom a world where we expand our abortion rights to allow for that.
So just so we're clear before we go to Mr. Hamlin, do you support abortion access, elective abortion access, in the first 24 weeks before viability?
I was going to say, you can look at my records. I've actually voted in favor of, last year we did the Planned Parenthood access. I voted in favor of it. I voted in favor of the taking away all the antiquated abortion laws, and voted to allow for I forget exactly how they phrased it, but the ability of doctors to have their own, rights to, perform whatever procedures they deemed medically necessary. And so I've been in favor of that. Personally, I am pro-life. I God, for the grace of God, go I. I hope, none of my children ever have to experience this. I wish that we had lived in a world where this wasn't a reality. I wish there weren't, it wasn't, something that happened. But I have not been, opposed to, any of the votes that have come forward, far as actually limiting a woman's access. And it's Massachusetts. We really haven't had anyone that have limited, a woman's access. They've more just codified in code that access is available.
Biggest thing when it comes to the Roe Act is the education that somebody's going to be able to get. It's going to be a case-by-case type of thing. There's no way you can do that in any sort of blanket. If you do something in regards for this, and they are sat through Planned Parenthoods, the different groups that are out there that talk in regards for it, and give them a full education so the person can make their decision on it. I wouldn't say it's a coaxed decision. It's a decision where they can look at it, weigh that out as a human being, as they are, and make those decisions for what they're going to be doing. It's something that needs to be done on a case-by-case basis, and in order for it to happen, I would never put, I would say I would never want to be in that position to make those decisions in regards to something like that, because my decision wouldn't be for the abortion. But on the same aspect, if you give somebody a full education and give them the ability to make that proper decision, then that would be something that is better for their life at that point.
Could I rebut that? Or did you have a follow-up?
I was going to have one follow-up, just because I want to make sure all of our positions are clarified. then you can
sure.
rebut. Are there circumstances where you would support limits to abortion access?
Yes, and once you're well, limits to it, once you're past your stages, once you're by your weak points and different things like that, yes, there should be you've had your time to make the decisions beforehand. If you get the education, everything beforehand, you have those times that you can make those decisions. They should be made in a timely fashion. You're in that position, you know what's going on, you get your education behind it, you weigh everything out and you figure things out. There are some that as soon as they find out, there's not a doubt in their mind. So it's something that it would be that way in order for everything to be happening for them.
I guess my rebuttal is that in the Sun Chronicle, you said the opposite. You said that you fully supported the Roe Act and you would vote for it as is. But in addition, it's not an education bill. This is not a bill. I mean, you keep talking about this education. That's not what the Roe Act in Massachusetts is about. It's about codifying abortion and expanding abortion and having the medical exemption right, and then also having the minor not having to have parental notification right. Those are the components of the bill.
Right.
It's not creating this education. We've already codified that. We've already created in laws that we've passed over the past 15 years. We've already created the access for Planned Parenthood to be able to have facilities. We've already created within our school system and within the public school system, education on abortion and sex ed and the different methodologies, whether it's on birth control or the morning after pill or how an abortion takes place. We've already done that. So I just want to make sure we clarify that that's not what the Roe Act as written is about. It's about they're presenting it as codifying it just in case the Supreme Court, even though a majority of the court has already said that they considered it settled law. We'll see. Politicians lie, judges lie. I mean, it is what it is. Even Amy Coney Barrett has said that she considers it settled law. That being said, if that becomes the case, and then we should address that. This is not the case. This law was written in conjunction with the New York law, and this was done from a political standpoint against the Alabama law, against the Georgia law, against the Louisiana law, against what they did in Mississippi, to say, oh, well, you're going to limit abortion. Well, we're going to expand it. In this stupid tit for tat that politicians are famous for, when it's not even a case in Massachusetts where there actually is a need, unless you want to expand abortion beyond where it is now.
Can you respond, or do you want to move on?
We'll move on.
This question will be for you, Mr. Hamlin. Do you believe that you're going to be a legislative ally or a foe to the LGBTQ community?
I would be an ally. I would definitely be an ally. I mean, I don't have any issues with anything in regards for people in their lives, the choices that they have in their lives. What I want to do is find out the person that they are. It's the only thing that makes a difference to me. Are they a good person? Plain and simple. There are different aspects that they're looking at in life, their ways of life, the different things that they look at in life, their comfort they feel in life is their choice. I'm not here to judge that or do anything with it. What I judge is their person that they are. If they're good people, that's all I need in my life.
Definitely an ally. I support gay marriage. I support transgender rights. I was the only Republican that was actually a sponsor and spoke on in favor of ahead of time. I got a lot of grief from my party over it, and from some of the other extreme organizations. But nevertheless, I'm a personal human liberty person. I'm like, if what you want to do with your life and in your sexuality, that doesn't affect me, and it shouldn't affect me. If what you're doing is endangering me, you're deciding to drive 200 miles an hour on the highway, Yeah, now I have a problem of it. Now we have to have rules and regulations. But a person's sexuality, who cares? And I think we've done a good job in this state. I think sometimes there's a little, gamesmanship, that goes on with around this particular issue, in so much that there's, people are trying to create sometimes issues and problems, and that there's people against it that where there really isn't. I think the world that's against it in Massachusetts is very, very minute and shrinking by the day. And I think as we are educated people and sophisticated and worldly and understand how human interaction works out, I think Massachusetts will continue to lead the way on not just LGBTQ rights, but on all civil liberties and all rights for all people.
Representative Dooley, on the subject of our state colleges and universities, this is a question that I know many of my students would be interested to hear both of your answers. Do you believe that Massachusetts students have a right to a free higher education at our state colleges and universities?
In a wonderful utopian society, it would be lovely.
Let's deal with the reality then.
But let's go with reality. The reality is, education is extremely expensive. It is it's already substantially reason the Massachusetts UMass system is so great of a value. It's already substantially subsidized by taxpayers. We should continue to subsidize it. We should continue to work to make sure everyone has access to it. We should create additional programs and policies in place that make sure that probably a horrible thing to say, but no child left behind. I know that's not, I'm dating myself with the No Child Left Behind, but we need to make sure that everyone has the ability to go. But if you make something free, then it's kind of what it's worth. If there is no cost, if there is no sacrifice, then anybody can go, and if you do a half-assed job and you fail out, who cares? It didn't cost me anything. I had a fun couple semesters partying and things along those lines. I think there needs to be some skin in the game. I think it's good that there's a component to it that's financial, and people we should do more work programs where kids can earn the ability, or let's create like they did, back in the 80s and early 90s in rural parts of this country where they needed surgeons and needed doctors. Let's pay for those schools, provided they sign a contract that you have to do X, Y, and Z in this particular community. We need, in Greenfield, we need teachers, or whatever it is. Let's create programs like that. Let's be thoughtful for people that have a need, that really want to learn and move forward. But we shouldn't just throw good money at it. And, in that particular situation, the billionaire's kid is also getting a free education. It just doesn't make sense. And we can't afford it.
Free? No. It should be a reduced rate, absolutely, for Massachusetts residents. There's other states that offer different plans out there for kids that, if they're residents, they can have a reduced rates to it. Massachusetts should be doing something in regards for the same type of thing for them. You have some higher educations in Massachusetts that are charging outrageous figures, and the state schools really aren't that much behind them. There should be a larger difference between there than what they are, and especially to Massachusetts residents. It's something that needs to be looked after. There's no question.
Question for you, Brian. The MBTA. Its budgetary outlook is bleak before COVID, bleaker after COVID, and that's just the budget. Simply put, what do we do?
And they announced something really great today. They're really short on money. $300 million, I think they're missing at this point. It's not the easiest thing that's going to be out there in order to handle everything else. And the state already has a lot of fundings that are heading towards that, going through for new trains, new facilities, new buses. The money is being spent out there already. How do we alter it so it's going to be something better? I'm really not sure in regards for making the changes that need to be done for that, until I get into office and see more in regards for what's going to be happening with it all. The biggest thing that's out there is the reliability and everything that's behind there. So if they can step to a point where they get something that's working, if you have something that's going to be reliable, people will be willing to pay more for it, I feel. If you have something that keeps breaking down and runs at limited times and everything else, they're not going to be looking to pay the extra money for it. So we need to get a better system that's up and running. How we're fully going to be funding everything else to get to that point, I'm not sure yet at this point. I need to be part of the budget, which I don't think they've done the 2021 budget at this point yet, have they?
Nope. Currently, the T is subsidized by 60% by taxpayers. So over $1 billion, taxpayers are already subsidizing it. So it's already running at a huge deficit, if you want to look at it from that standpoint. But more importantly, what we really need to do, unfortunately, I hate to give this answer, but we kind of need to put a pin into it. Boston has changed. The workforce has changed dramatically. COVID has changed the entire makeup. So many more people are not commuting. So many more people are working from home. One of the keys to reducing our transportation crisis is, and this was done 3 years ago, they had the whole plan. It was like, all right, how do we get people to do more flex hours and more people working from home and everything like that? And it was too big of a step for corporations to do it, and so they just didn't do it. And this all of a sudden created this. I know my wife's law firm, they have several floors in Boston. All of their secretarial staff's working from home. They won't need that space going forward. And many corporations that I've spoken to are in the same position. They're like, it's working out so well. We never thought it would. This was this kind of experiment that everyone talked about, but they never wanted to pull the trigger on it because, I don't want to be the only one. When everyone was forced to do it, now we have this entire workforce who are coming in maybe a couple days a week, and they're doing the hybrid, and they're doing off hours, and they're doing all of these different things that really we need to kind of not throw good money after bad at our transportation system. We need to make sure our transportation system's working as well as possible, do some more express routes and things like that, not spend silly money like they have, in the past with, different expansion projects and things like that. They should, let's streamline what we have. Let's see what's working and adjust accordingly. And there might be a situation where we're able to not need as many, as much rail coming in and as many buses and things along those lines, because people are working from home and they're not clogging the highway. And so if we're able to do a lifestyle switch, which is great for the environment, it's great for human interaction, it's great from a time crunch standpoint, all of these things, you get to spend more time with your family and friends. It could work out really, really well, but we're at such an early stage on this experiment, as it were. I think it's really, really hard to tell. But if you want to go ask me that question last year, I would have given you a very, very different answer about the biggest problem with the T is it's all running into Boston and it's landlocked. I mean, it's locked out by the sea on a big chunk of it. And so we have all these hubs. It doesn't matter how many rail lines you have going in. Only so many people can land at South Station at one particular time. They only have so many rail. They can't expand it. It's just the footprint's not there. It's impossible to do that. And so they have to really think outside of the box, whether it's doing pods or doing, rail hubs where then they shuttle people in, those sort of things. There's a lot of other things that have been talked about. But right now, with the new world, the new normal, as it were, we really have to see how corporate Boston adjusts going forward.
I mean, that would be huge for unemployment. You start cutting things like that out, unemployment's going to jump drastically through the Boston area, through transportation, everything else. You start cutting out the trains, you start cutting out the buses and that. That'll increase the unemployment.
Well, I mean, I guess I would disagree with that. I mean, the number of people employed by the T isn't that, isn't a significant number within the Massachusetts economy and in the workforce. We're talking, maybe 1/10 of 1%. I mean, it's a tiny, tiny number, and I'm not talking about eliminating the T. I'm just saying, we don't necessarily need to be expanding it. Let's look at, moving forward, it's like, all right, if we're going to have less people, we don't need as many cars, or maybe we can have a Franklin, Norfolk, Walpole express route now that we have the second rail line in, and it makes it people are able to get in a half hour, 40 minutes instead of an hour. Those are the sort of things that we should be looking at to make the T. And I think you said it. I mean, the number one issue is speed and reliability. If we can do things like that, and we have a small, and we don't have the huge number and the crush of people coming in where they have to have these monster trains running the entire line, picking up everyone just because they're short on that, and they were given a lot more flexibility, I think our infrastructure would be much more nimble. I think it would be much more effective. I think more people would be willing to take it because they know they can get in a half hour, and more importantly, get out in a half hour if their kids get sick at school. So I think those are the things that we can look at. But if the dynamic changes, and the workforce in Boston, which at one point was down 90%, at the beginning part of COVID, if it stays in the 50% range, what we have in infrastructure is good. It just needs to be tweaked and moved forward. If we go back up to the 100%, and continuing to move on where the roads are crowded from 3 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, and then flip around, it's exactly the same going out. If that becomes the norm again, then we're going to have to adjust. We have to completely revamp the system, because with the rail lines where they're set up, with the infrastructure, with the old diesel engines, it can't work. It just physically. The only way to really make it work like a world-class city is to rip it all up and start all over. And we can't do that. It's just impractical, not to mention $1 zillion.
Well, gentlemen, for a final question, as we're approaching the end, the reality of Massachusetts politics, Mr. Dooley, you are a Republican.
I am.
In a deeply, deeply blue state. And Mr. Hamlin, you are a Democrat in a state that can be largely controlled by one man, the Speaker of the House. Both of you have significant challenges that you would face if elected come November 3rd. That being said, and we'll start with you, Mr. Hamlin.
Okay.
Why should the voters of the 9th Norfolk cast their ballot for you?
Biggest thing that it's going to come down to is I like to think I have a great ability to work with people, negotiate with people, talk with people. It's something I've worked at. There's no question. When people talk, I listen to them. I want to hear what they have to say, and I will give them back what they're looking for. If I'm not able to give it to them, then we will work something out so it can work that way. So it's something there. If we're looking to work on things, when it comes down to the fact of I get in, as we're going to go through things and everything else, I want to go through it and get it set up so my voting when I get in there would be voting by conscience, voting by district, voting by party, and it would be in that order. So I'm not going to go in and vote as a Democrat. I want to go in and vote for my community. That's what I'm going to be there for. So I want to go in, I want to work with them, and I like sleeping at night. So my conscience is going to be the first thing that's going to be there. I want to hear from my district, so I want to be voting for what they're looking for. It's not my opinion. They will hear my opinion when I talk to them about it. So I want to do things that they're looking for me to do, and it's going to have to be done with a clear conscience. And if it works with a Democrat that's in there for the Speaker of the House, that much better for us in our communities. But what it's going to come down to is my feeling behind things. I couldn't be any more sincere in regards to dealing with people when it comes down to it. I am frank with people talking about things, and I will be very upfront in regards to what's going to happen to it. I don't put a lot of polish on things. I have generally very short answers when it comes down to it. But it's a simple fact of when you logistically look at things, that's the way life is going to be. Life is not all cherries and roses and everything else that are going to be out there. Life is not simple. So if you hear things in the aspect where people are looking for something that's going to make them feel better, the only way I'm going to say it to them is if it's something that legitimately should be working well for the communities that they're living in.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Why should people vote for me? I think I've done a really good job. I've worked really, really hard. I try my best. I'm not always right. Just ask my wife. But I always do my best, and I always try to put the community first. I don't play politics. I've taken some hard votes which were not politically correct, which I got hit by from my party. I've got hit by different special interest groups and things along those lines. And like Brian said, courage of your convictions is what matters at the end of the day. I am more than happy to go up there and be the only one that votes on something if I believe in my heart of hearts that it's wrong. And I will continue to do that. I'm not going to be bought out because it's a job that I want to have forever. It doesn't pay a ton of money. It's not a lot of glamours. There's a ton of nights and weekends, but I love it. I love being able to help people. I've been able to do some really, really cool things. I've been able to help people, where people have come to me with tears in their eyes, not knowing what to do next. And I've been able to find a solution and be able to help them. And one of the things I think I bring to the table is I do this full time, so it's that's a big aspect of it because it really is a full-time job. And I spend some weeks I don't even know how much 60, 70 hours. But the other thing that I bring to the table is that I've been spending my life where I've whether it was in the financial services industry or as a town clerk and things along those lines, I've made a lot of contacts, and I have great relationships with pretty much people in every aspect of government, whether it's on the Democratic side, whether it's with Governor Baker, whether it's with the EHOD, whether it's with with DESE on the school side. It's about relationships, and in the private sector, whether it's Eversource and National Grid or whatever the case may be. That is a big aspect of the job. It's about relationships. It's understanding who the players are, understanding how to best situate your community, and I think I've done a good job on that. I've brought a ton of money back to the community. I think I've helped quite a few people. And I would be honored to have their vote to bring me back and let me keep trying to work for them. Thank you.
Thank you both for the civil discourse. Thank you for
You didn't cut off our mics at all.
Yeah,
No one gave you the button, though.
Brevity is not your friend, so a couple of times it crossed my mind.
Thank you for being here for us.
And thanks for the Norfolk Community Television and the Norfolk Community League for putting this together.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank
We
you all.
certainly appreciate everything. So
All right.
that concludes our debate. Gentlemen, have a good
Awesome.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.